So welcome back. One of the greatest mysteries in the Naruto series was Sasuke's goal. Sasuke said he would lead humanity and the ninja world down a far darker approach, or at least he wanted to. But what exactly does he mean by this? This video will cover what would happen right after defeating Naruto, and present a Boruto alternative, so it's a hypothetical continuation of a Naruto series. Now I'm not taking a dig at Boruto, it's a good series, but keep in mind this is a what if video. My friend Naruto Explained has done a video on this topic, and I was inspired by it, so I'd recommend checking that out if you want to. I also plan to do a continuation of this video in a collaboration with him. Anyway, let's get into this video. So during that final fight, at the Valley of the End, what if Naruto held back too much? What if he was too slow? Or if he mistimed his attacks? Kuruma told Naruto that if he doesn't time his Rasengan right, that he could have got all of his chakra drained by Sasuke and lost the fight. So imagine what would happen in this timeline. Sasuke manages to drain Naruto's chakra, making him drop to his knees. Sasuke then tells him about the world he's about to create, and now that he's the strongest. He then uses Chidori to kill him, stabbing him through the heart. And he does this with some difficulty, because he still did love Naruto as a friend. He had somewhat acknowledged him prior to this. It's one of the main reasons he couldn't kill him in part 1. Anyway, we do know Uchiha get drastically stronger when their love turns into hate. That's why killing their loved ones or seeing their loved ones die amps the chakra they can use and even allows them to unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan. So killing Naruto would give him a massive amp, he would be full of even more hate, and this hate would make him stronger. Sasuke now is essentially unstoppable if he beat Naruto. Remember, this man was strong enough to push Kage back with his Susanoo and fight the likes of Madara. So there shouldn't be anybody alive who poses too much of a threat to him, and this is when he sets off to go and kill everybody, or anybody who could pose a threat to him, potentially standing in his way. Kuruma must let fate take his course, but is slightly conflicted. When coming across what remains of Team 7, Sakura is forced to fight Sasuke, knowing that Naruto is now dead. Sasuke would decapitate Sakura's head to get around her regeneration, and use Chidori's stream to kill Kakashi. So now he's got the two biggest threats towards him out of the way. Sasuke would then lower the Biju that he had kept sealed in the Chibaku Tensei, and then use them or force them to do the right hand sign so he can undo the infinite Tsukuyomi. I don't think he would just let the Biju then roam around freely. He'll definitely still keep them under his control, just so he has their power as backup, possibly being able to use the Ashura Susanoo whenever he wants. Sasuke then kills the 5 Kage, following up by releasing everybody from their pods. The reason he'd release everybody is because unlike Madara, he wants to change the real world in his own image. Instead of creating an entirely new one, he wants to be the Shadow Hokage, or somebody who rules from the shadows. So he needs people, he needs subjects for that. Otherwise, what's he gonna be Hokage of? Now it gets very interesting here. I think what he would do with Naruto's body in the 5 Kage are turn him into his Rinnegan puppets, the same way Nagato used the 6 paths of pain. He'd use the Nakura path to heal any damage that he did to their bodies, so the right Kage would become an Ashura path, the Mizukage would become a human path, the Kaze Kage would become an animal path, the Hokage would become a Nakura path, and Naruto would become the Diva path. Now they should all be able to use their normal abilities. Like Naruto would still have 6 paths, excluding Kuruma, who's been reformed somewhere else in this world since Naruto's dead, and obviously the other half of Kuruma is sealed away by Sasuke. The Raikage would still have his lightning armor, and Gaara his sand, etc. But they'd also have access to the Rinnegan abilities that you can channel individually into them, the same way Nagato did with his paths. Anyway, this is perfect since there'll be 6 of them in total, meaning the Kage puppets, one of them can go in each village, and then Naruto's puppet always assists Sasuke. And yes, Sasuke can control them from very long distances, which makes sense as I'll explain later on. This just sounds like something Kishimoto would do narratively, representing that pain cycle of hatred persisted. Sasuke's love turned into hatred, and Naruto unfortunately failed. So moving into the blank period, Sasuke would reassemble Team Taka, and they would stay loyal to him. Take Jugo. Jugo follows Sasuke because he views him as the only person capable of preventing him from killing people while he's enraged by killer intent or the Sharingan. He thinks of Sasuke as his cage, as he did with Kimimaru. So he gets to see Team Taka as pretty much his only friends. He respects Sasuke because he freed him and he helped him find Zabuza's sword. So it's not beyond reason to say he would stick by Sasuke as he creates this new dark world. Now when talking about Corinne, it's confirmed within her memories that she started to have feelings for Sasuke after he saved her during the second phase of the Chunin exams. Hence she instantly forgave him after he's willing to use her as nothing but a tool against Danzo. And this leads me on to a very interesting idea actually. Corinne has been pointed out as Sasuke's favourite by Obito, Suigetsu even states that she's a girl who's gonna hook up with Sasuke, Kabuto even saying that Sasuke has this great understanding of her. So taking all of that into consideration, what if he had a child of Corinne? And just hear me out, it's not outside the realm of possibility. We know that he wants to preserve the Uchiha lineage, and he needs somebody to pass the mantle on to, just in case of his death, and there's a very good chance he could die, knowing that there's other Otsutsuki like Kage out there. choosing Kurin would be the easiest choice for him. I mean, at this point he does know Kurin is an Uzumaki, Uzumakis being descendants of Senju. This means genetically the kid would have Senju and Uchiha blood, possibly giving this child Boruto level potential. So for the sake of his story, let's just say he has a son with Kurin called Kurutan, which is a play on the word crouton, you know, the stuff you'd put in salad, which is in reference to Sasuke having a daughter called Sarada in Boruto, Sarada meaning salad. It was Naruto explains idea, so credit goes out to him. Anyway, if he did have his son, he'd strictly train his son so he can reach the peak of his potential. As you can imagine, he'd be super useful throughout the rest of his story. Now, it's been a few years since the war, and Toneri's come down to Earth to expand his celestial decree, kidnapping Hanabi and also Hinata. Sasuke wouldn't really care until he realizes that Toneri's using the Tenseigan to move the moon and is planning to destroy the planet. When this becomes obvious to him, he'd manage to find his way to the moon, the same way Naruto and his friends did, and he'd face Toneri. Toneri would explain that the world that the Sage's Six Paths created has failed, and Sasuke is a prime example of that. Obviously, Sasuke isn't taking this insult lightly. So as Toneri transforms into his Tenseigan chakra mode, Sasuke believes he can take Toneri down by himself pretty much, which he should be able to do quite easily. In the main timeline around this time, in Naruto the Lost Novel, he's stated to be the strongest member of Team 7, making him stronger than Naruto. A suppressed KCM Naruto was easily capable of taking down Toneri, focusing that KCM power into one punch and knocking him out. So Sasuke should easily be able to do that, since he's much stronger in this timeline. So after defeating Toneri, Sasuke returns back to Earth, and this is when we get a time skip. So I'm gonna spice things up now. After enslaving the world and ruling it as his dictator, Sasuke had wondered why Kage was building a Zetsu army, so he suspects that more Otsutsuki could be out there, posing a threat to his world, just like in the main story. So he'd explore Kage's realms to learn about the Otsutsuki. You're probably wondering why he'd leave the world without any defense, possibly even allowing his society to turn against him while he's gone. But by then, he should be able to control his puppets over various dimensions. Now hear me out, he could technically already feel Naruto's chakra over different dimensions. Momoshiki in the novels could create these strings across different dimensions as well, similar to how Kage still had control over aspects of Earth while she was in her own Genesis dimension, interacting and even moving chakra from a god tree to a Genesis dimension. I'm sure Sasuke would experiment and explore how to use his abilities more efficiently. He could probably learn something similar to this, just so he can leave and explore while he's off-world. I'd even wager that he'll spend most of his time off-world potentially, maybe coming across alien civilizations who aren't actually Otsutsuki. We know aliens exist because in the third novel, Momoshiki destroyed this low-level civilization by causing their sun to supernova. It's basically what Otsutsuki do. They find different civilizations and drain their planet's natural energy. If Sasuke did run into aliens like this, he might enslave them, even steal their technology, but like I said, we don't know if he'll run into them. We know he doesn't run into any different aliens in the main timeline. But that's probably because he was more invested in what was going on Earth, since obviously he did love Sakura, had a child with her. He didn't really feel too pressured, because he knew he had Naruto by his side. So I can't say exactly what would happen in his scenario within this timeline. Anyway, he would definitely find the scrolls Kage left in her dimensions and get them deciphered by the Cipher Unit, learning of Momoshiki and Kinshiki. In preparation, he'd continue to train for the next 13 years by sparring and training his now teenage son, who should be much stronger than Boruto from a main timeline. So when Momoshiki and Kinshiki finally arrive, he's ready for them, and he is strong enough to fight them. In the main timeline, within only a year, he'd become so strong that Sasuke thought he was strong enough to take on a Kage-level opponent with a missing arm by himself. Although usually he teams up with Naruto, he was sure that he could do it by himself. He should be way stronger than the main timeline version of Sasuke, if you take into consideration all the stuff he has in his toolkit. So when the pair arrive, they cause a lot of destruction and ruckus. Sasuke will be alerted straight away, who'd use his time-space ninjutsu to arrive. It's in character for Sasuke to take out his opponents before they even have a chance to grow stronger or transform, so Momoshiki and Kinshiki wouldn't be allowed to fuse, but there's a good chance that with all of his power and strength has got to Sasuke's head and he's more arrogant, maybe he wants a challenge. So let's just say he allows the Otsutsuki to fuse. Even then, fused Momoshiki would stand no chance against this adult Six Paths Biju apt Sasuke with his puppets. There's not even any need for his son to get involved, he could just observe. If you take note that Sasuke in the main timeline with a missing arm and about half of his chakra missing, since that's how much Naruto was missing and he's meant to be relative to him, was able to at least swap hands with Momoshiki briefly before getting overwhelmed. This timeline's version of Sasuke will be way stronger than that, in a completely different league, so Momoshiki will just get one shot and blitzed. Now Jigen would be observing Sasuke and would stay in hiding against such a formidable enemy. He'd eventually allow a model to create cyborgs that could fight and gauge Sasuke's strength. Jigen suspects that Sasuke is far stronger than himself due to him having a weak vessel, so allows a model to create cyborgs stronger than himself. Also, Momoshiki wouldn't be able to place a karma on Sasuke based off how strong he is, and we've seen Sasuke overwhelm curses before, for example against Danzo. Anyway, Momoshiki would get overwhelmed and he would die. Moving on to the Cyborgs arc, months later, Kara's air balloon will be sabotaged and would crash near New Konoha. Found by his officers, they then encounter Kawaki, who's fighting Garu. Garu is easily defeated by Kawaki. Kawaki then continues to kill the officers and escape. However, it's inevitable that Kawaki would be caught by Kara again, since there's no Team 7 to help recover him after he passes out from fighting. No Naruto for Kawaki to respect and care about, so he ultimately gives up his escape and is recovered by Delta. Jigen would then send Delta and Boruto to infiltrate Konoha. They would obviously get folded by any of Sasuke's puppets, since this version of Sasuke should be way stronger than Team 7. I can't really see Boruto's abilities being that useful against such a strong opponent. Since he has better Sharingan than Sarada, he should be able to see his virus on a molecular level. This is when Jigen would get desperate and realize that Sasuke is powerful. So he'd send Ada and Damien to go fight the puppets. The insane hacks and power would be beyond Jigen and would threaten the puppets, even taking a few of them down. Sasuke would be able to see through the Rinnegan what kind of abilities they have and has at least some sort of understanding of how they function. Now the way he gets past Ada and Damien's weird abilities is maybe through Genjutsu, or worst case scenario the Infinite Tsukuyomi, which he would cast onto the moon. As long as his real body remains at a good range from Ada, he shouldn't be affected by her infatuation ability. And since Genjutsu doesn't technically count as a harmful attack that Damien can reflect, it might work on both him and Ada. And even if Sasuke was in their vicinity, I think he still might be able to pull off a Genjutsu. Since we know Shikamaru was affected by Ada's infatuation ability, but could technically still pull off some jutsu like his Shadow Possession through his sheer willpower, who put them under Genjutsu and then killed them. Now it's around this time where Isshiki's vessel Jigen is failing him and fading slowly. And now obviously this process would take much longer than it did in the main timeline, since Jigen hasn't fought Sasuke yet, meaning his body isn't cracking away like he did at the end of a fight with Naruto and Sasuke. So he realizes that he needs Kawaki as his new vessel, ASAP. Amado knows that he'll destroy humanity if he succeeds, so thinks that Sasuke is the lesser of the two evils, and decides to team up with him. He finds Sasuke and explains Ishiki's backstory, goal, the Otsutsuki law, how god trees function, and the coordinates to both his dimensions, just like the intel Sasuke found in the main timeline. Amado also uses Kashin Koji to fight Jigen, of course, to stop him from taking Kawaki's body. Amado projects this using his glasses, just like he does in the main timeline, just so Sasuke can see. Sasuke is more worried about how strong he is. Amado explains that his kage is superior, and if he was to fully revive in Kawaki's body, he might be invincible. During the fight, he observes Ishiki's ability to shrink objects. Amado explains all of Ishiki's abilities, as well as his access to a dimension that doesn't have time flowing through it. This kind of prompts Sasuke into formulating a plan with his son, who might actually prove himself useful in this encounter since Korutan is stronger than Boruto in this timeline. And we already know how useful Boruto was in the fight against Ishiki, like when he transported him away, was able to hold off one of his cubes. So he could actually do something, I guess. Anyway, Kashin Koji loses the fight against Ishiki, obviously. He gains Kawaki's body, becoming Kawashiki. And with his body, Ishiki tells Code to guard the Jubi's dimension, as he suspects that Amado has already told Sasuke where his dimensions are. Sasuke then visits the Jubi's dimension and learns of what Ishiki looks like. This is when he confronts Code, who tries to attack Sasuke but doesn't pose a big enough threat to do anything, so Sasuke just disposes of him easily. When he finds the Jubi, he knows he has to destroy it, so uses the Amaterasu to dispose of it, so Ishiki can't complete his plan. When Ishiki finds out, he's massively angered. After resting up, he formulates a plan and visits Akara Base's dimension to finally face Ishiki alongside his son, who he has no choice but to bring along because it's do or die. If they fail today, then Ishiki will destroy Earth. It's in this dimension where Kawashiki is waiting for Sasuke. They then face off. Sasuke first sends the Paths, or his puppets, to take him on, but they get beat up pretty easily and badly by Kawashiki. They get crushed by his cubes that negate sensory abilities. The fight between Sasuke and Ishiki is pretty pitched. Sasuke can react to Ishiki's rods, but he struggles to see his opponent when he minimizes, so he's forced to use his Indra Susanoo to protect himself and his son. Now this is kind of headcanon, but it's for the sake of this video. In this timeline, Sasuke is as strong as Baryon mode Naruto, but the issue is Ishiki's in Kawaki's body, so he's far stronger than the original Ishiki, so it's not an absolute beatdown on Sasuke's end, but he's still struggling to keep up with his abilities. Sasuke waits for Ishiki to summon one of the cubes. Sasuke asks Ishiki about this ability. He explains it's called Daikokoten, in which he opens a dimension that has no time flowing through it. He shows Sasuke an example of it because he's so overconfident in his own abilities and so self-absorbed. When his portal opens, he gets his son to restrain him using his adamantine chains, which he inherited from his mother, neutralizing Ishiki's chakra and nullifying his ninjutsu. Sasuke then uses that exact opportunity to push him inside his own dimension that has no time flowing through it, and so it freezes Ishiki inside of it forever. And yes, Sasuke's won, and his son proved pretty useful in this fight. He returns home with his son. This was a tough battle for him, but both of them stand victorious. Sasuke sits on his throne, knowing that he's defeated multiple Otsutsuki, and is a little bit overconfident. He thinks that nobody can defeat him, and that's where I'm gonna end the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, like the video, subscribe, and then you'll get a part 2. And that part 2 will be coming soon. And the next video will be about this new world that Sasuke created, how Ashura's soul has reincarnated into somebody new, and this person now poses a massive threat to Sasuke. I'll be following their story. If it seems interesting, I will be dropping that video soon, and it will be a collaboration video with Naruto Explained. Naruto Explained was meant to be in this video as well, but unfortunately he lost his voice and he's been ill recently, so he wasn't able to record for this video, but rest assured he will be in the next one. So if you enjoyed this video, you want to see a part 2 to this, don't forget to sub, don't forget to like, check out these other videos right here, and thanks for making it to the end of the video, and peace.